Hi there, and welcome to the Cotswold Explorer. I'm Robin Shuckburgh, and we're exploring the wonderful region of the Cotswolds in southwest England. We've decided to revisit the centre of the region and find some hidden gems, places that are not quite so famous, but still just as beautiful. And you find Ross, Widget, Gizmo and me in the little village of Weston Sub Edge. We're just off the escarpment of the Cotswolds in the Vale of Evesham. It's extraordinarily beautiful here. We're going to show you around. Come with me. This little village is full of surprises, and I'm delighted to be here. But first of all, I'm going to break one of the rules we try and abide by when making these films. We try, if we can, not to date them. They'll be around forever and a day, and we want them to remain relevant. However, this has been for me a momentous month. The old grammar school in Bampton, the building used as the cottage hospital in the filming of Downton Abbey, about which we've made films in the past, and some of you will have seen them, has undergone a magnificent restoration. It finally reopened this week. It's been an incredibly long and challenging project, raising all the money needed for this work, and I am so proud of my team at the Bampton Community Archive, who undertook the job and have succeeded so brilliantly. They are a wonderful bunch. The plan was hatched a year or so before my oldest grandchild Matilda was even thought of, and she is 8 years old today. So I'm going to wish her an incredibly happy birthday, and to tell you that this little girl reads aloud so well that her younger brother Huxley prefers her to read him a bedtime story rather than me. Now, I'm not used to this kind of competition, especially from an 8-year-old. So now, all I have to do is interest her in medieval history and the Cotswold Hills, and we have found my successor. Always good to keep things in the family. Now, back to this lovely village of Weston Sub Edge. Just a little north of the famous town of Broadway, we dropped into the village of Weston Sub Edge from Saintbury, another tiny village about which we'll be telling you next week. There's been a settlement at Weston Sub Edge since Roman times, and by the Norman invasion of 1066, it was a valuable manor. The Domesday Book recorded its owner in 1086 as Anfrid de Cormeilles, a man who owned lots of land across Gloucestershire. He married into the powerful de Lacy family, the same Lacys who owned, and actually still own, Stanway House, which we visited with such pleasure last year. And his heirs retained his estates until the male line of his family failed in the early 13th century. They built a manor house at Weston Sub Edge no later than the 12th century, probably replacing an existing structure. In 1269, the manor passed into the hands of Godfrey Gifford, Bishop of Worcester, who built the church right next to his house. In 1302, when he died, it passed to one John Gifford. Unfortunately, John chose to join the Duke of Lancaster in his rebellion against Edward II, and he was hanged at Gloucester after the king defeated the rebels at the Battle of Borough Bridge in 1322. Weston Sub Edge was briefly taken into Crown ownership, but was eventually restored to the Gifford family, who hung on to it until 1608. Today, all that remains of this fortified manor house are the earthworks of the square moat. The manor house itself was demolished in the early 19th century, and we don't really know what it looked like. But highly unusually, the land on which it sat is for sale at the moment. Of course, it's highly protected, and the chances of anyone buying a piece of this ground being allowed to do anything except stand and stare at it are extremely remote. So strict are the rules that it's unlikely you would even be allowed to put up a fence around your land in case the fence post disturbed something important underground. Nevertheless, it is a rather remarkable opportunity to own a piece of medieval manor ground, and I can't deny feeling a slight temptation to make inquiries. Please don't tell my wife. The church that Godfrey built in the 14th century is of course still here, although hugely altered during the 19th century by an increasingly famous architect and stained glass maker, Frederick Preedy. Dedicated to St. Lawrence, although formerly to St. John the Baptist, the church has an original and lovely western tower in the Perpendicular style, with 3 diagonal buttresses, gargoyles and pinnacles. Preedy started his restoration in 1849, but really got going in 1853. In the following 8 years, he transformed this church into what you see today. His windows are impressive. He was extremely unusual for his time, indeed for any time really, in that he was an architect who designed his own stained glass windows, but also made them himself. This set of windows show his work in various stages of his career, and are certainly worth coming here for, all on their own. But there is a good stone reredos, probably mid-19th century, a square, bold 20th century font, perched on an early English Gothic base, a Jacobean pulpit of the kind with which we've become very familiar. There's a royal arms to Queen Anne, and a marble tablet with flaming urns dedicated to the spectacularly named Faramus Fiennes, who died in 1708. There's a great brass on the wall to William Hodges, who died in 1590, with an 80-centimetre figure of which in the old days, when that kind of thing was allowed, I would certainly have tried to take a brass rubbing. And there's a recumbent effigy of one Captain Francis Bourne, with sword and helmet, who died in 1880 and must have been a distinguished soldier. The streets of this lovely village are lined with some lovely 17th century buildings, predominantly built with the Cotswold stone we know so well, but a couple built in the style more familiar in Stratford territory, black and white with wood frames, reminding us that once again we have stepped just a little out of our home territory. We've been lucky enough to visit many beautiful and peaceful villages on this western edge of the Cotswolds, and this little place of Weston Sub Edge is as beautiful as any. Also, it boasts a really nice pub. It's at the bottom of the slope on the main road, and it's called the Seagrave Arms. Ross and I stopped off for some lunch here, and we were welcomed with friendliness and enthusiasm by the new management, who had the terrifying misfortune to have embarked on this business just as the pandemic struck. They have survived with hard work and determination, and judging by the delicious lunch we had, they will continue to do really well. If it works out for you, drop in for a bite, or even stay a night or two, and give them our regards. I hope you've enjoyed our little trip around Weston Sub Edge. We've had a very nice time here. We had a delicious lunch. We might even put an offer in for the field. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You can find us on all the normal platforms, and we'll see you again in the very near future.